Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
On the morning of April 15th, 2005, a well-respected district attorney in central Pennsylvania took a day off work, climbed into his beloved red Mini Cooper, and called his girlfriend to tell her he was going for a drive. That was the last time anyone ever heard from him. Ray Gricar had spent 20 years prosecuting murderers and rapists in Center County, Pennsylvania, and was on the cusp of retirement. What made him leave his house that day? And did he know that he was never coming back? Now, over 20 years later, Ray Gricar remains missing, and the questions just keep multiplying. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell the stories of those who never came home. Today, I want to tell you the story of Ray Gricar. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode and is here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. Right off the bat, was the intro correct? Do you know about this case? You should know about this case.
Why should I?
Because this has a lot to do with Center County, Pennsylvania in the early 2000s. And while this is a few years after you graduated from Penn State, this was still huge news in the Penn State area.
I'm sure it was, but in 2005, I was in D.C.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So no, I know nothing about this case.
Seriously, you've never heard,
No.
Legitimately, you've never heard about Ray Gricar, the missing DA?
No. Not at all.
Oh my God. And, spoiler alert, but one of the things that makes this case kind of insane is that it actually ties back into the Jerry Sandusky case.
Okay.
Which you do know about.
Yes, I do know about that.
Yeah. So, but I do actually understand why you wouldn't know about that tie-in, because that connection wasn't made until years after Ray's disappearance.
Okay.
But yeah, so it's kind of crazy. Now, I mentioned the Mini Cooper in the intro.
Mm-hmm.
And last time you talked about, how we've done kind of similar cases in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another one. There's an abandoned car.
Okay, but he's a almost retired prosecutor, so
Yeah.
There's a lot more people that would potentially want to do him harm.
For sure.
Than just a random person leaving their car on the side of the road.
Right. But there's a lot more to that as well. So, obviously we'll get into all of it, but I can't believe you've never heard of this. I don't know why. After 6 years of doing this show, I really shouldn't be shocked anymore.
Why are you surprised?
I don't know. You didn't know about Cindy's song, and that was while you were at Penn State.
Once again, I knew about Cindy's song. I just didn't know all of the details.
Okay. So before we get into this, though, we've had a bunch of people join us over on Patreon, so we'd like to take a quick moment to give them a shout out. Nicoletta L., Lisa S., Morgan S., Ginger, Taylor, Thea A., and Shelly W. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you all so much.
As a reminder, if you'd like to get our episodes ad-free and early, you can join us over on Patreon at any level, starting at just $2 a month. And you'll also get a free copy of the ebook that I wrote. So now let's enlighten you about the case of Ray Gricar. Ray Frank Gricar was born on October 9th, 1945 in Cleveland, Ohio. He was the youngest of two boys and grew up in a neighborhood called Collinwood on the east side of the city. He attended the Gilmore Academy, a prestigious Catholic high school in nearby Gates Mills, and went on to the University of Dayton. A political science major, Ray wasn't initially planning on becoming an attorney, but secured an internship at the local prosecutor's office. And after that, it was over. Ray Gricar knew where he was supposed to be. It was also at Dayton that he met the person he believed he was supposed to be with, his first wife, Barbara Gray. They married in 1969. Yeah, and Barbara gave an interview to a newspaper and said that Ray's initial plan was to get a master's in Russian literature.
What the hell?
Yeah, so him becoming a DA was like completely not on his vision board, I guess,
Yeah, wow.
in the early days. And it really was that internship that just changed everything for him. After college, the pair set off to become a power couple, both attending Case Western University. Ray went for law school, and Barbara earned her PhD in organizational behavior. After graduation, Ray went to work as a prosecutor for Cuyahoga County, where he specialized in high-profile cases, including rape and murder. By all accounts, he was good at it. Colleagues have said that he was methodical, thorough, and not easily rattled. He was the kind of attorney who wouldn't make a move until he was certain he could win. Early in their marriage, Ray and Barbara received some tough news. They weren't going to be able to have children of their own. But not ones to let setbacks stop them, the Gricars adopted their daughter Laura in 1978. Ray was a devoted dad from the start, and though he was driven professionally, he had no problem prioritizing Laura over his own career when necessary. In 1980, Barbara was offered a position at Penn State University in State College, Pennsylvania. Not only did Ray leave his job at the prosecutor's office so Barbara could advance her career, but he decided to be a stay-at-home dad while Barbara established herself in her new job.
And at that time, that was pretty unheard of.
Well, that's what Barbara said. She told the Center Daily Times, quote, "It was an extraordinary gift he gave me, being a house husband for a year. That sort of thing wasn't really done back then," end quote. Laura has fond memories of that time as well, of trips to the park and sitting on her father's lap watching Mr. Rogers. While it was a wonderful time for the little family, the plan was never for Ray to give up his career as a prosecutor. So when the Center County District Attorney, a man named David Grine, offered him an assistant position, he took it. He worked his way up, and in 1985, when the sitting DA chose not to run for re-election, Ray ran for the open seat. He won by 600 votes. He would go on to win that race 4 more times. Ray Gricar was described by colleagues as meticulous, serious, and deeply ethical. Bob Booner, former Montour County DA, who was one of Ray's closest friends, said that he was, quote, "the most serious prosecutor I've ever met," end quote. Outside of the office, people described Ray as a bit of a private person. He was professional and cordial, but he wasn't someone who let you in easily. One colleague described Ray to the Center Daily Times shortly after his disappearance as someone who would give you like a smile and a head nod in the hall, but wouldn't stop to ask about your weekend plans. As the 80s wrapped up, both Ray and Barbara were growing professionally, but unfortunately, they also grew apart on that journey, and he and Barbara divorced in 1991. The pair remained on good terms, though, and Laura remained close with both of her parents. And Barbara continued to work at Penn State. She actually would have been there when you were there, but in the business school, so you wouldn't have had any.
No connection at all.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised that you haven't heard of her. Ray remarried in 1996, but that marriage also ended in divorce in 2001. Not much has been written about that marriage, and when Ray went missing, Barbara appeared in many news articles and interviews, but his second wife didn't seem to have any part of his life after they split. Like, I didn't even see her. I think maybe one article mentioned her name, but like she really just did not show up in any of the coverage. But 2 divorces didn't make Ray give up on love, though it may have made him slightly more cautious. By around 2002 or 2003, he had settled into a relationship with Patty Fornicola, an employee of his own district attorney's office. They didn't marry, but they did move in together into Patty's childhood home in a section of Bellefonte called Half Moon Hill.
Nice job on the pronunciation.
I know, I had to ask you, and luckily I watched a Dateline episode on this too, and they also reinforced that it's Bellefonte because to me it looks like Belafonte, and that's how I would have said it.
Not correct.
And I've known about this case for like years, and I always thought that it was Gricar, and I just recently found out it was Gricar, so it would have been very embarrassing if I mispronounced his name the entire time. In January 2005, Ray was ready to move on to the next chapter of his life. At 59 years old, he announced that he would not be seeking re-election. After 2 decades as DA, he was done. He was getting ready to retire, and by all accounts, he was genuinely looking forward to it. He had plans to visit Laura, who by that time was living in Seattle, Washington, and he and Patty had plans to drive across the country and travel to national parks. He was financially stable. He wasn't rich, but comfortable, with about $100,000 in savings and a good pension on the way. According to Bob Buhner, he talked constantly about finally being able to relax after 35 years as a prosecutor.
Wait, you said January 2005?
Yeah.
Okay, so to further my case of the reason why I wouldn't have heard about this, I was at the academy. I wasn't even in D.C. at that point.
Well, that's when he announced his retirement. He went missing in April of 2005.
Okay, so I was a new officer.
Not in Pennsylvania, to be clear.
Correct.
Yeah. On April 15th, 2005, Ray had 8.5 months left on the job and the rest of his life ahead of him. He was in a great place, and that's why what happened that day has baffled friends, family, and police for over 20 years. April 15th was a Friday. Ray was supposed to work that day, but told Patty that morning that he was going to play hooky. And that wasn't unusual for Ray. He'd done it before. His colleagues had also joked that with retirement right around the corner, he was a short timer. Patty told him to enjoy his day off, and she headed to work. What? Are you smiling because you're a short timer with 4 years left?
Yes. No, I just know the feeling of being in a position of, I don't give a fuck. I'm taking a day off.
Yeah. And that's how Patty described it. I want to say it was like 2006. She was talking to, I believe, Dateline. And she was just like, yeah, I tried to get him out of bed. And he was just like, no.
Yeah, that is standard short timer.
Yeah. At 11:30 a.m., he called Patty to let her know he was driving through the Brush Valley area, northeast of Center Hall, headed toward Lewisburg. He told her he wouldn't be back in time to feed the dog, and she said she'd take care of it. That was the last confirmed conversation anyone had with Ray Gricar. When Patty came home from work that evening, Ray wasn't there. She assumed he was still out, so she went to the gym. When she got back and he still wasn't home, she started to worry. At 11:30 that night, exactly 12 hours after their last call, she filed a missing persons report.
So, random day off.
Mm-hmm.
Doing something unexpected.
Yep.
Going for a ride. Potentially eliminates the possibility of any sort of planned murder.
Right.
From, somebody
who had been stalking him or whatever.
Right.
Right. Yeah, because he was deviating from his normal routine.
Right. However,
it opens up a lot of other possibilities.
Right.
Yeah. Ray Gricar was the elected DA of Center County, so even though he was an adult who left his home in his own car of his own volition, police immediately jumped into action. Because it was so late, though, there wasn't a ton they could do that night, but they did start calling around. By Saturday afternoon, Bellefonte Police Chief Dwayne Dixon held a press conference alerting the public to be on the lookout for both Gricar and his red and white 2004 Mini Cooper. That evening, around 6:30, police found Ray's Mini Cooper in a gravel parking lot across from the Street of Shops Antiques Mall in Lewisburg, around 60 miles away. The car was locked. Ray's county-issued cell phone was inside, but his keys, wallet, and laptop were not.
His laptop?
His work laptop.
That's strange.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought you were going to say his keys, wallet, and his personal cell phone were not.
I don't think he had a personal cell phone.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, so I think that the work cell phone was the only one that he had. And then he did have his work laptop and then a PC at his home. Now, I don't know if when they found his car at 6:30, if they would have realized that the laptop was missing, because they wouldn't have necessarily expected it to have been in the car.
Sure.
So that little tidbit probably came later.
Yeah, it's just interesting to note. He's at an antique shop. Why is he taking his work laptop out of the car, and where is he going to work on that at an antique shop?
Exactly.
What else was in that shopping center?
So the only thing that I've heard mentioned was the antique style. So I don't think it was like a regular strip mall.
Yeah.
I really just think it was kind of a mall that had maybe various antique stores, you know?
Okay.
Kind of
Yeah. The only reason why I ask that is because, if there was like a coffee shop or,
right,
a restaurant of some sort that he was going to that would make sense for him to do some work.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's anything like that, though. So back to the car, there were no signs of a struggle. There was no blood, nothing was overturned, and nothing was obviously wrong. Again, it was locked, but his keys were gone. They weren't locked inside of the car or anything that would be suspicious.
Yeah.
There was one thing that stood out, though. Maybe not to the officers who initially found the car, but to those who knew Ray. The car smelled strongly of cigarette smoke, and there was cigarette ash on the passenger seat. Ray didn't smoke and strongly disliked it, and everybody who knew him said he would not have allowed someone to smoke in his car.
So maybe the antique store was the dump site.
Well, so maybe not, because that location wasn't random. Ray enjoyed antiquing, and that antique mall is someplace he had been before.
Okay, so then my next thought is somebody was in the car with him.
Right. He also liked to take long drives to unwind. So given that, it wasn't completely crazy for his car to be there at this random antique store 60 miles away from his house. And that's why when, he called Patty and said, hey, I'm going to go for a drive, she didn't think that was weird because that is something he would do. The problem, of course, was that Ray was nowhere to be found. Though the location was pretty innocuous on the surface, for those in Ray's family, it began to feel like a dreadful case of deja vu. The parking lot where Ray's car was found sat adjacent to two bridges over the Susquehanna River. Ray's nephew told Dateline, quote, to say that it was an eerie parallel would be the understatement of the century, end quote. Now, to understand what he was talking about, we need to discuss another Gricar, Roy, Ray's older brother. It's spring, which is the perfect time to do a little closet reset, and that is why we're using Quince. My problem is I've got a bunch of random clothes of varying degrees of quality. Ethan's problem is he has clothes that are from the early 2000s. I have no idea what's even in your closet half the time.
Definitely have 20-plus-year-old clothes in there.
Right. So we are both using Quince to focus more on quality over quantity. Quince makes beautiful everyday pieces using premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and super soft denim with styles starting around $50. And you just made an order.
Yeah, so I just ordered a pair of chinos and a pair of golf shorts. If they're half as comfortable as the sweater that I had bought from Quince, they're going to be great additions to my wardrobe.
Refresh your spring wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ATTWG for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. Go to QUINCE.com/ATTWG for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ATTWG. In May 1996, Roy Gricar told his wife he was going out to buy mulch and never came home. A week later, his body was pulled from the Great Miami River near Dayton, Ohio. The medical examiner ruled his death a suicide. As Tony Gricar said, his first thought was that this was, quote, the exact same thing, end quote. In fact, he said that the first thing he said to police was, he's probably in the river. Now, Tony was an adult at this time, but he was Roy's son.
Okay.
In the days after the car was found, police and divers searched the Susquehanna River. FBI helicopters covered the water from above. The then police chief of Bellefonte, Sean Weaver, later told a reporter that conditions for their search were ideal. The water was clear and you could see right to the bottom, but they found nothing. While Ray's family may have immediately gone towards suicide, there were multiple witnesses who quickly came forward with sightings.
Okay.
The first two were reported on almost immediately and came from the antique mall. Here's an excerpt from the Center Daily Times from April 20th, 2005. Quote, mall owner Craig Bennett, 48, said he has told Bellefonte and the state police investigators in repeated conversations that he saw a man, quote, very close, end quote, to Gricar's description standing in a passageway inside the mall about that time. The man, wearing a blue vest or a fleece jacket, stood for a time in front of a storefront that is closed and under construction, end quote.
Okay, so probably him.
Yes, because Ray was last seen wearing a blue Eddie Bauer fleece jacket. The interesting part about that sighting, though, is that according to Bennett, it was around noon on Saturday, which would have been 24 hours after Ray left his house and about, 6 hours before his car was discovered by police. Bennett also said, quote, "It appeared as though he was waiting for someone. It had all the look as if he was waiting for someone," end quote.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what's crazy is we didn't find out until a year after Ray went missing that Bennett saw even more than that. In May 2006, we find out from the Center Times Daily that he saw Ray walking with and talking to a woman. She was tall, about 5'8" to 5'10", good-looking, and had dark hair. He said that the pair was casual, seemed like they knew each other, but that it didn't seem intimate or romantic. When asked why this had never been mentioned, both the police and the new DA, Michael Madeira, were like, I don't know, it didn't seem important.
How is that not important?
It was insane because, there is this entire long article in the Center Daily Times from 2006, and they're both interviewed, and they're like, I don't know, we looked into it. We thought it might be this, one lady that Ray knew. It wasn't her. So we just dropped it. It didn't seem important. It fell by the wayside.
It's pretty fucking important.
Yeah.
That could have explained the smell of smoke in the car if she was the passenger.
Well, there's another
smoking.
thing that we find out from this article that could have explained the smoke in the car. That's not even her. I don't understand. It's insane. And that's why, on these cases, I really try to go back to the original newspaper articles and see what was reported contemporaneously.
Right.
Because 20 years later, you read an article about this and they're like, and Ray was seen talking to a woman and da-da-da-da-da. But when you go back to the articles,
yeah.
We didn't find that out till 2006.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, yes, it wasn't even that revelation that could explain the cigarette smoke. Although, of course that could, right?
Yeah.
But Officer Daryl Zaccagni, the lead investigator on Ray's case, also told the paper that a man described as a, quote, construction worker type, end quote, was seen leaning into the passenger window of a Mini Cooper. And if this man had a cigarette,
that would explain the smell and
the ash on the passenger seat.
Yes. When was this? Was Friday or Saturday?
Well, that's a really good question because, as I mentioned in that first article, Bennett said that it was Saturday. There was another witness who said that he saw the same thing but couldn't pinpoint whether it was Friday or Saturday. But then, in a year later, when they're interviewed, they said Friday. So I don't know,
kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal, right?
Whether it was Friday or Saturday.
Yeah.
Because if it's Saturday, that leads to a whole lot of other questions.
Oh, exactly. Because, he was still, at least maybe not in the same clothes that he left in, but at least wearing the same jacket he left in.
Right. And what was he doing for the 24 hours that he was missing?
Yeah.
But if it's Friday, then it tracks with the normal, quote unquote, timeline.
Exactly. Because, again, it was an hour away, give or take. He called Patty around 11:30. He was seen around, lunchtime.
Yeah.
So it would have made sense.
Right. That all tracks. But but then, timeline aside, who are these people?
Who are these people?
Who's this woman? Who's this quote unquote construction worker type?
Yeah.
That's leaning into his car.
And also what does that even mean?
I know. I
I
didn't want to bring that up.
Yeah.
But is he wearing a orange construction vest?
That's what I was picturing. Just a guy in a reflective vest and a hard hat leaning into this car.
Yeah.
But I doubt that's what that means. But I don't know because that was never really clarified.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's hard to judge the veracity of any of these sightings, but to me, the evidence does seem to point more toward a meeting of some sort rather than a depressed guy driving to an antique mall so he can jump off a bridge.
Was it a meeting, or did somebody recognize him while he was out?
Well, remember in the 2005 article, the antique mall owner said that the guy he believes was Gricar looked like he was waiting for someone.
Right. But it could have been a chance encounter before he saw him waiting for
I thought
somebody.
You didn't believe in coincidences. So listen, again, I do think it points more toward a meeting than, just randomly deciding to pick this as a suicide spot.
Oh, yeah. No,
which,
I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think this is a suicide.
But it could be, right? But at least one dog seems to agree with my theory, because police brought in a dog whose behavior around the area where the car was found suggested that Ray may have gotten into another vehicle. Other mall employees reported seeing Ray's Mini Cooper in the parking lot on Friday between 5 and 6 p.m. But again, that makes it even weirder if that first sighting was on Saturday and not Friday, because that means that car might have been there overnight and then Ray came back. I don't know.
Yeah.
So if his car was there on Friday and he was seen there on Saturday, then there's the potential that there was an extra random 24 hours where Ray Gricar was alive and well and hanging around Lewisburg for some reason.
Right.
However, another mall employee did later say he also saw Ray, but couldn't pinpoint whether it was Friday or Saturday. So that's the guy I was mentioning before. And again, in the 2006 interview, Bennett, the mall owner, wasn't named in that article, but they did refer to him as the antiques mall owner. So I'm guessing it's the same guy, right?
Probably, yeah.
And he said that he saw Ray with the mystery woman on April 15th, which was Friday, the day he went missing. So
I think it's probably safe to assume that there were some memory issues between Friday and Saturday, but it's most likely that he saw him on Friday.
Yeah. Because that makes a lot more sense.
Right. Because if it was like an abduction scenario, so what, they abducted him Friday, hung out with him Friday night, and then brought him back to the mall on Saturday.
To hang out more?
Yeah, that. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's safe to assume it's Friday.
I think so
sightings,
too.
Yeah.
While there were plenty of alleged Ray sightings beyond the mall, one in particular sticks out. On April 18th, 3 days after Ray disappeared, both an off-duty Wilkes-Barre police officer and a bartender independently told police that they had seen a man matching Ray's description sitting at the bar watching the Cleveland Indians play baseball on TV. So it was like the bartender, this guy who was at the bar, who was sitting next to Ray, and happened to be a Wilkes-Barre police officer.
And it would fit. I mean, he grew up in Cleveland.
And he was a huge baseball fan. And in fact, when he first went missing, his friends were like, really, we hoped he had just taken off, because he had done that before. He had taken off, not told anyone where he was going, went to a Cleveland Indians game, and then came back that night, and everybody's like, where the hell were you? He's like, I don't know. I was at a baseball game. Like, what's wrong? So, that does fit with Ray.
But why would he have left his Mini Cooper?
Right. And just randomly gone to a bar 3 days later.
And I'm not the best at, Pennsylvania geography, but I'm pretty sure Wilkes-Barre is a little bit far away from Lewisburg, where a little too far to walk.
Near Scranton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know where that is in relation to anything else.
Well, it's not close enough to walk from Lewisburg.
Well, for sure. But I do think it's interesting because both cops and bartenders are both known to be good with faces.
Yeah.
And to me, that lends a degree of credibility to the sighting. So while that lead ultimately went nowhere, they never did identify the man who was at the bar, So it was never definitively proven to have not been Ray. While there are other sightings that had been of Ray that they were able to find the person it actually was. Within the first week of the search, the FBI was brought in. Ray's bank accounts, credit cards, cell phone, and email were all analyzed, and there was no activity on any of them after April 15th. Not a single transaction and not a single login. Everyone was stumped. The leads were drying up, and those sightings were still coming in. None of them were Ray. And this continued until July, when the case got even more confusing. On July 30th, 2005, fishermen discovered Ray's county-issued laptop in the Susquehanna River beneath a bridge between Lewisburg and Milton. The laptop, of course, was badly waterlogged, as you would expect, but more importantly, the hard drive was missing.
The hard drive was missing?
Yeah. Divers searched the area near where the laptop was found, and nothing else turned up. It's also important to note that the hard drive wouldn't have just fallen out because it was tossed in the river. It was secured with at least one screw and a slide switch.
Right.
So police believe that it was deliberately removed. So yeah, just to be clear, because the hard drive was missing, the computer was basically useless.
Yeah, it's a shell.
Yeah. So that, was an interesting piece of evidence, but it didn't actually tell them anything. They really needed the hard drive. So then in October, it finally looked like we would not only have answers, but potentially solve the entire case. Because that month, a fisherman found a hard drive on the banks of the Susquehanna about 100 yards from where the laptop had been found. The FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, and a private data recovery firm called Kroll on Track all attempted to extract data from it, but all three came up empty.
Came up empty meaning that
they couldn't get a thing off of it.
Because of
badly
damaged?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear, the Kroll on Track, they were able to extract hard drive information from the Columbia shuttle that had exploded in 2003. So and it's them, the Secret Service, the FBI, these are organizations that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get a thing off of the hard drive.
That's crazy. There's motive there, though.
Oh, 100%. But of what?
Yeah. I mean, right. We don't know murder. We don't know what.
Mm-hmm. To this day, no one knows what was on that hard drive or why it was removed. We also don't know who removed it. My first thought was whomever took Ray removed it and destroyed both the hard drive and the laptop itself. However, a 2009 revelation by police puts that into question. That April, on the 4-year anniversary of Ray's disappearance, police revealed that someone had conducted a series of internet searches on Ray's home computer in the weeks before his disappearance. Those searches included how to wreck a hard drive, how to fry a hard drive, and water damage to a notebook computer.
Okay. So who's in his house? Him and his girlfriend?
Yep.
Is that it?
Yeah. His daughter was living across
In
the country.
Seattle, right.
And that was it.
Okay, so short of his girlfriend randomly murdering him.
Right.
Which
again, she was at work all day. She was never actually a suspect.
So that leaves Ray.
And separately, investigators learned that Ray had purchased software designed to wipe a laptop's hard drive. Now, this could mean a few things. Some point to it as evidence that Ray had been planning his own disappearance and wanted to erase whatever was on that computer so it couldn't be traced. Others argue that it could still point to someone else trying to eliminate evidence. But the one theory I don't buy, which also comes up, is that Ray, who was approaching retirement, simply wanted to make sure he was returning a clean, wiped county device.
No, that's not it.
And but if he had just bought that software, I could believe that, right? Because...
But why would you look up how to damage a hard drive?
Exactly. How to fry a hard drive and then water damage, because that's typically not what you're going to do when you're returning something back to the county upon retirement. In July 2011, Ray's daughter Laura petitioned Center County to declare her father legally dead. The judge granted the request, and Ray Gricar was declared dead in absentia on July 25th, 2011. In a bit of timing that feels almost too strange to be real, but like so much of this case feels almost too strange to be real, the very next day, the day after Ray was declared dead, a man was arrested in Utah for trespassing in a police department parking garage. He had no ID on him and refused to give his name. When law enforcement publicized his photo to try to figure out who he was, people immediately began saying the man looked remarkably like Ray Gricar. They were the same height, same weight, and had similar facial features. Like their wrinkles were in the same place on their face. So this went national because, after nothing had come from the hard drive that was found, Ray's case had gone quiet. So this was huge news, right? Like this is the first anything that the case had seen in a couple of years. Investigators sent Ray's fingerprints to Utah, but they didn't match. And when I read that, I was like, I don't know, man. DNA. Like, I still didn't believe it. I'm like, he could have done something to his fingerprints. They could have screwed up the analysis. But then I did read in a later article that man was eventually identified. So It 100% was not Ray. As the years went on, police continued to investigate sightings, and Ray's old cases were scoured to see if there was anyone he sent to prison who may have held a grudge.
Well, I'm sure there were a lot.
Right. But again, that was, of course, one of the first things that investigators looked at back in 2005.
Right.
And they just really were not finding anyone that made sense. But it wasn't until 2011 that the public and even some of Ray's colleagues found out that he had been involved in a ticking time bomb of a case, and it was about to explode. In May 1998, the mother of an 11-year-old boy went to state college police with a complaint about Jerry Sandusky, who at the time was an assistant football coach under Joe Paterno at Penn State. The boy's mother said that Sandusky had showered with her son in a locker room in a way that made her son deeply uncomfortable. This, of course, led to an investigation. The detective, Ron Schreffler, conducted interviews and set up a recorded confrontation in which the boy's mother asked Sandusky directly whether he'd been aroused by contact with her son. According to the account that later came out during Sandusky's 2012 trial, Sandusky's response was deeply troubling. He didn't deny showering with the boy. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't want to quote it in full, but he basically said he was wrong, that he wished he could get forgiveness, and that he wished he were dead. A child psychologist who evaluated the boy concluded that Sandusky was, quote, likely a pedophile, end quote. However, a second psychologist reached a different conclusion. Detective Schreffler has said that he wanted to prosecute Sandusky based on his investigation, but it wasn't up to him. It was up to the district attorney, Ray Gricar. On June 2nd, 1998, Ray Gricar decided not to prosecute. He never explained why. He never put his reasoning in writing in any place that was later found. And as I mentioned, a lot of people didn't even know that this investigation had taken place. When this information was revealed, a lot of people believe that Ray had helped cover up the scandal. However, his colleague, Bob Buhner, has a more charitable take. He believes that Ray simply didn't think the evidence was strong enough to convict. Sandusky's statements were too ambiguous to constitute a confession, and two conflicting psychological evaluations would make a jury impossible to sway. Now, of course, we'll never know what Ray was thinking. What we do know is Sandusky continued to work at Penn State until his retirement in 1999, retained access to university facilities and his youth charity, the Second Mile, and continued abusing children for years. In 2011, he was arrested, and in 2012, a jury found him guilty of 45 of 48 counts of child sexual abuse against 10 boys over a span of 15 years. And he was sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison. Whether he was actively trying to cover up abuse or if he genuinely believed the case against Sandusky wasn't strong enough, the unfortunate fact is that Ray Gricar's decision in 1998 allowed Jerry Sandusky to abuse many more children. Unsurprisingly, it also caused people to start asking whether there was any connection between his choice not to prosecute Sandusky and his disappearance 7 years later. Now, according to investigators, there's no evidence linking the two. The detective who led Ray's case went on record saying, quote, "There is absolutely nothing going on with Ray Gricar and Jerry Sandusky," end quote, in the time leading up to his disappearance. There were no threatening communications, no indication Ray was revisiting the Sandusky case, and there was nothing in his papers or his desk or his planner that mentioned Sandusky at all. Could there have been information on his hard drive, though? Sure. But the simple timing of Ray's disappearance makes it hard for me to believe that there is a direct connection. Remember, Ray was on his way out as prosecutor. He had less than 9 months left in office, after which he was completely retiring from the legal profession. The wheels of justice move notoriously slowly in this country, so if we're talking about like murder, like somebody trying to keep Ray quiet, trying to hide information that he had on Sandusky, something along those lines, why would you go after such like a high profile target when you could have just waited a few months and he would have been gone?
Right.
And then, again, some people point to maybe he had guilt over this as maybe a motive for him to take his own life or disappear willingly. But why then?
Right.
And then if guilt was the reason for either of those things, why then destroy any evidence that he may have had? Like, wouldn't you want that to be out there and discoverable even after you're gone?
Yeah, right. Because if you're guilty, or if you have a guilty conscience about something or that you did or didn't do, like you would want the justice to prevail.
Right. And everybody says Ray was very much, the guy who would want justice to prevail. So if for whatever reason he either realized that he screwed up or regretted his part in some sort of cover up,
yeah,
he's not fixing it by destroying his hard drive.
Right.
No,
I think it's obvious. Whatever was on that hard drive implicated him in something. And my theory at this point is that he planned his own disappearance, planned to destroy the hard drive. Those people that he met at the antique mall were people that were helping him get away.
Yeah. So, okay, let's get into it then. Let's talk theories. So the first theory, and the one police have historically considered the most likely, is suicide. The parallels to Roy are impossible to ignore. Both brothers left their cars near bridges over rivers, but Roy's body was found and Ray's wasn't. Police checked the Susquehanna under favorable conditions and found nothing, but that doesn't mean that it's completely impossible.
Sure.
So like on the episode of Dateline, one of the former police chiefs who, worked on this investigation is like, yes, it's very unlikely that we wouldn't have found his body had he jumped off a bridge or whatever. He said, but, the river does feed into, I forget which body of water, but a larger body of water. And he said there's a dam, and that like if he had made it down to the dam, there's a way that he kind of could have gotten like sucked under some things, and his body would have been basically, this is graphic, but like chopped up essentially. So he said that, again, it's just not out of the realm of possibility. However, while Roy's son Tony has said that his father dealt with depression for a good portion of his life prior to his suicide, Ray had no documented history of depression or suicidal ideation. He was financially stable, and again, he was weeks away from filing the paperwork for a pension that he'd spent 35 years building. He had a close relationship with Patty and, more importantly, with his daughter Laura. Friends who spoke with him in the days before his disappearance said he seemed fine. And Bob Buhner, who talked to Ray right before he went missing, said definitively, quote, "There's no way he was remotely suicidal at that time," end quote. However, Keith Beerley, the former Center County magistrate and county commissioner, told WJAC in 2025 that he does believe that Ray died by suicide, saying that people who saw him in those final days described him as, quote, "despondent and depressed." So there are conflicting accounts of his emotional state, but there's still no body.
And people, if he's exhibiting those behaviors of being despondent and depressed, like he could have also been despondent and depressed because he's thinking that he's getting caught up in something, or that something is going to come out that's going to ruin his life or his career, and he's planning an exit strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the second theory, that Ray planned his own disappearance, that he started a new life somewhere. And a lot of the same evidence, as you just pointed out, that points to suicide could also point to this theory, including something that I had never heard until that 2025 interview with Beerley. Apparently, something interesting was found on Gricar's desk at work after he disappeared. According to Beerley, quote, "The book was open in the DA's office to How Do You Replace a District Attorney?" End quote. Now, that's not something Ray would have needed to look up if he was going to retire as planned, because the answer to the question is there's an election.
Right.
And in fact, like the people who were running in the primaries to replace Ray, like that had already started. That process was already going.
Yeah.
But if he disappeared or died before his term was up, then yes, that would be a question that you would perhaps want to look up and find the answer to. In addition, at some point before he vanished, Ray apparently expressed interest in the case of a Cleveland police chief who had disappeared in 1985, seemingly intentionally, to start a new life. The man left his car parked near Lake Erie with his wallet and badge inside, and his body was never found.
All of these things are way too similar to what was left in his wake.
There's also the Slovenia angle. Ray was fluent in Slovenian and semi-fluent in Russian. He had relatives in Slovenia and had made trips to that part of Europe. Some people believe that he could have made it overseas and just blended in. Now, the evidence against him running off and starting a new life is the same as it is in most of the cases we cover. Ray left everything behind. No luggage or clothes were missing, and he had about $100,000 sitting in an account. But more importantly, to the people who knew Ray, he didn't contact his daughter, not once in 20 years. Friends who knew him say that Ray was deeply devoted to Laura, and just walking away without ever reaching out to her doesn't fit the man that they knew.
So what is Laura's theory? Suicide?
I don't know, actually. I don't know that she's ever said directly what her theory is.
Was she the one that petitioned the court to declare him dead?
And that was just so she could settle his estate, basically.
Yeah. I wasn't insinuating anything nefarious there.
Yeah, no, definitely not nefarious. But I don't think that necessarily means that she believed, one way or another what happened to him.
Yeah.
But just, it was time. The third theory is foul play, of course. I don't know. I keep on kind of landing here. I go back and forth a lot. But the evidence for it is kind of thin. But as we mentioned, Ray spent decades putting dangerous people in prison. And his friend Bob Buhner said it best, quote, "District attorneys have real enemies and people that want to harm us. It goes with the territory," end quote. In 2013, Buhner received a letter from a prison inmate who was a former ranking member of Hell's Angels. He alleged that his cellmate had confessed to Ray's murder. According to the source, the motive wasn't Sandusky. It was a stiff state prison sentence Ray had sought in connection with an aggravated assault conviction in the late 1990s. The man convicted of that assault wanted revenge. A check of court records confirmed that a man matching the source's description had indeed been convicted of aggravated assault in Center County and received a multi-year sentence. Buhner passed the information on to investigators, but it doesn't seem to have gone anywhere.
Look, I mean, that was My first thought as well was foul play.
Yeah.
But again, why was he searching on his home computer
Yeah.
about how to quote unquote fry a hard drive?
Yeah.
And then you find the hard drive separate from the laptop in the river.
Right. And while I could believe that an angry person, who he put in prison would want to harm him, yeah, it doesn't fit with that.
And
it doesn't fit with him taking the day off of work.
Right.
It doesn't fit with him talking to some woman in an antique mall.
But you know what does fit all of these things?
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the day off of work. Hey, I'm going for a ride, honey. And then you drive up somewhere to meet with a few people.
Yeah.
Who are going to help you get out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
You throw your laptop and a broken hard drive into the river and you take off. You're seen in Wilkes-Barre several days later, which is, I believe, northeast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it's closer to New York.
Right.
Yeah.
Either on your way to a small airport or Canada.
Right.
To go to another country.
Because at the time, I believe you still didn't need to have your passport to cross over the Canadian border. It was after 9/11, but I don't think that requirement happened directly after 9/11.
No,
I think it did take a
directly.
while.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But again, so Buhner seems really on the foul play angle. In 2021, he gave an interview in which he said he had received new information and that he now had, quote, a pretty good sense of, in general, who was responsible. I strongly believe there are people still alive who know what happened to Ray Gricar, know how he was lured to Lewisburg, and know what happened after, end quote. He passed that information to investigators as well. The then Centre County DA declined to comment. Bob Buhner has since died, so whatever he believed, whatever he thought he knew, died with him. But that word, lured, is very interesting.
Yeah.
To me, the sightings of the woman and the construction guy with Ray are the biggest reasons I don't believe it's suicide. Because again, you don't need extra people to jump off a bridge. For me, I am kind of split between foul play and him walking off. Like the foul play, him being lured can fit with the sightings. But
what was on the hard drive?
What was on the hard drive?
Right.
And because, the hard drive could have been taken, again, by the people who harmed him.
But why was he searching that on his home computer?
Right. That's the part that doesn't fit.
Right. Unless there was some sort of blackmail angle.
Right. And that's what I've actually wondered about, because there are a few weird things. Now, in articles over the years, even starting back in 2005, they've said consistently that he didn't have money problems, nothing like that, right? Like nothing that indicated blackmail or a double life or gambling or, anything like that, right? But I do think there are a few things that are kind of weird. I don't know his entire financial picture, of course. I also don't know if any forensic accounting was done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how deeply they investigated the money, because a few things stick out to me. He was married and divorced twice.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what his divorce settlements were. So maybe Barbara and wife number 2 cleaned him out and he really didn't have much because of the divorces.
Sure.
However, he made good money. So at the time of his disappearance, his salary was $129,000 a year, which is a shitload of money in Centre County, Pennsylvania in 2005.
Yep.
Now, on top of that, he lived with Patty in her childhood home. Didn't have a house payment.
Right.
Didn't have a mortgage. His Mini Cooper, which was bought new, it was in 2004, he went missing in 2005, was in Patty's name.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And apparently, and I don't even understand how this works, because the cell phone was his county issued cell phone. But apparently, I've read this, that was in her name as well.
So maybe he did have some sort of credit issue.
There's something there. And yes, he had $100,000 in the bank, but I've never seen any mention of additional investments or anything else. So if that's all there was, why was that all there was? Like, it seems as though he should have had more money. And so did he not have more money, or was that money elsewhere?
Right.
In a place, in an account, in a whatever that people didn't know about. And again, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if like forensic accountants got involved in this, like how deeply that went. But to me, I feel like there's something there with money. I don't know what.
Well, there's definitely some information that is not publicly known.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton, of course, right? And I don't know what hasn't been released for good, solid investigative reasons, what hasn't been released just because like the public doesn't need to know, or what hasn't been released because the investigation fell short in a few ways, you know, which of course has been, that accusation has been made over the years.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like there's something with money there. And that, but see, even if there is like something with money, which is a very vague statement, could point toward either foul play or walking off and starting a new life.
Right. It's not a solid answer either way.
No. As of early 2025, Pennsylvania State Police renewed their public appeal and confirmed that a $5,000 reward is still being offered for information leading to a resolution. Trooper Jacob Reimstein said, quote, "This case is never closed until we're able to get to a final conclusion to the matter," end quote. Ray Gricar was not a naive or careless man. He was a career prosecutor who understood the criminal mind intimately. He knew how evidence was gathered. He knew how investigations were bungled. If he wanted to disappear, he had more knowledge of how to do it than almost anyone. But if he did want to disappear, would he have parked his car and met up with people in an area he had been known to frequent? Again, I vacillate between walking off and foul play, but I keep coming back to the laptop, the money, and the word Lord.
Mm-hmm.
What was on the laptop that needed to stay secret? Was Ray being blackmailed? Was that what that meeting was? Or did that hard drive have information on it that someone else wanted covered up? Ray Gricar was a man who spent his entire career seeking the truth for victims who couldn't speak for themselves. If foul play is what happened to him, the cruelest irony is that he may have become one of those victims. And over 20 years later, the truth is still buried somewhere in central Pennsylvania. Ray Gricar has been missing from Bellefonte, Pennsylvania since April 15th, 2005. He is a white male with graying hair and green eyes. At the time of his disappearance, Ray was approximately 6 feet tall and 172 pounds. He wore glasses and was last seen wearing blue jeans, tennis shoes, and a blue fleece jacket. Ray was 59 years old when he went missing. He would be 80 today. A $5,000 reward is being offered by Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers for information that leads to a resolution in this case. If you have any information about the disappearance of Ray Gricar, you can contact Pennsylvania State Police at 814-355-7545 or Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers at 1-800-472-8477. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheyweregone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, and Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it.